So this will be our college essay writing workshop. So I'm going to focus primarily on the common application personal essay, but I will talk a little bit about supplemental essays, which some schools require. And then there are also 2 additional essays or writing opportunities on the common application that I will address just briefly. My name is Miss Mennett, or Tara Mennett. I work here at Washburn in the Writing Center, and I work most of September and October and into November on college application essays, personal essays with students one-on-one in my role there. But I also will work with students on any writing assignment that they have in the building or for PSCO. So our plan for this session is just kind of an overview, which I think I've kind of already hit. We'll focus in on the Common App essay, and the reason why is that most of our students do use the Common App to apply. I know University of California uses a different system, and then there's some coalition application schools, but primarily we're using the Common App, and that essay can be, the personal essay can be transferred to other applications and even maybe some scholarships as well. And then also the supplemental essay, we'll talk about just general personal essay writing tips, and then just go over some of the steps that I work with students on when we're working together, and just wrap up the session with any questions. But do feel free, if something I'm saying doesn't make much sense or you have a question about it, feel free to just shout it out and let me know that you're wondering. So I like to use the term personal essay when we're talking about this 250 to 650 word college essay that goes along with the student's application, because I really think it's important for the student to think about themselves and who they are in this time and place and space right now. So kind of the message I've been sending with students this year is that there are 3 goals to the essay, and 2 of them fall under the umbrella of getting into college. And the way you do that is write a good essay with words that make sense when they're linked together, and punctuation that's in the right places, and grammar and mechanics that all show that you are a capable student and able to do the academic work at that college or university. Another important goal of the essay that will help your student get into college is show the stuff that can't be listed in a quantifiable list, whether it be the student's numbers, GPA, ACT scores, etc., or their extracurricular activities, but show a little bit deeper side to themselves and a passion of theirs, something like that. And that's one goal of the personal essay. That stuff gets you into college, right? But for me, the most important goal of that personal essay is to give time for our students to reflect on who they are right now in this time and space. The 18, 17-year-olds who are here in this room right now are about to embark on like an amazing journey into adulthood, right? And so if they take the time to reflect who they are, what is important to them, what they are passionate about, what they value, those things that they want to share about themselves, then these other 2 objectives just inevitably happen, because they're taking that time and they think deeply about who they are in this time and space. So when I work with a student, that's my goal, to working with them, that we're gonna go deep into who they are right now and what they really want to share about themselves and what they understand about themselves. One word that I will use probably more than once during this presentation is authentic, because I think that that is the most important thing that shines through on these essays. And so when the student is really reflective on who they are, that authenticity does come through. So I have this phrase that I kind of work on, and I took it from Mr. McKenzie. If any of you guys have Mr. McKenzie, I found it from him. It's not about what the students do or what they who they are necessarily, it's about who they be. It's about this internal piece of themselves. So essays should be descriptive and specific. As a reader, I should be able to see myself in that situation with you. I should be able to hear it or feel it in some way. It is not a list of the things that students do. while those accomplishments and clubs can be listed in the application, the personal essay is not necessarily the place to list those all out at all. And then that authentic voice, that student voice is really important. It's quite apparent when I proofread or edit essays, when a student uses a thesaurus, the grammar checker is always good, but even when it rearranges words and sentence structure, those things pop out. Or if another hand gets in there and starts doing a little bit of heavy-handed editing, that is apparent when we're looking at these. So that student voice is what's important. I usually tell students to think about what language, what words do you use when you are speaking in a small group discussion in an English class. How do you speak in that situation when you're with peers, but then every once in a while a teacher pops over and is listening in, right? So those are the words and that is the voice that we should be using, that tone. That level of formality. So there are two main types of essays when we're applying to college. The Common App personal essay is usually the bigger one. It's lengthier. It's 250 to 500 words. Some of our school-specific essays are going to be closer to 500 words. And then our supplemental essays are school-specific. So specific universities and colleges require additional essay writing or short answer responses, and that varies by the school. And there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason in terms of what type of schools request these essays. It can be highly selective liberal arts schools or very large universities that are like state universities are an example of them that take the supplemental. And they can be anywhere from 140 characters in length, which is just how many letters and spaces and periods and commas you're writing, right? It's like the length of a tweet, I believe, or was at one point, up to 650 words. Most common supplemental essays hover around that 150 to 300 word length, though. Specifically talking about the common application personal essay, the four main things to know about it is there are 7 essay prompts in which the student can respond to. And we'll look at all of them in the next 2 slides, but the 7th one does allow a student to just write an essay of their own design, so it can really be anything because they can pick number 7. I recommend that most students work on a Google document. We all have Google accounts here at Minneapolis Public Schools at Washburn. It's easily accessible. They know how to use Google Docs, so just write in what you know, and then you copy and paste the document over from there. There is a function in which you can like upload and things like that, but that just seems very scary to me. I would rather see the actual text right there in that text box. The only rule that we are given about structure is that word count. So it's 250 to 650 words. So along with that, in terms of format, there are no set number of paragraphs or style guidelines. Something that comes up often is like, do I write out numbers or do I write the numerals? Well, we don't have a style guide to go by, so it's really, in some way, what appearance are we projecting? So we do want the essay to be aesthetically pleasing, so thinking about how long our paragraphs are, in comparison to the other ones that are on the page, things like that. So students should be very intentional in all formatting decisions. So we shouldn't have a big long paragraph that's maybe 10 lines long and then the next one be 3 and then an 8-line paragraph and it kind of be jumpy. We want it to look very pleasing to the eye on a page. If you use a Google document, I'm going to get into that later, so we'll go back. So these are the prompts for the common essay. Number 1 is also a bit of a catch-all where there's a background, identity, or interest or talent that a student wants to write about. And these can be found quite easily just by Googling Common App college essay prompts. They are also available within the common application once the student starts working on it under the writing tab. A lot of students will write about something that happened to them, an obstacle or some sort of major change that happened in life, and there's prompt number 2 takes care of that one, and then the 2 other prompts later on also do. Prompt 3, thinking about challenging a belief or idea. This one is less common at Washburn, number 3. So when we're thinking about how do we stand out, sometimes just the prompt that we choose to respond to can help us with that, because immediately we're a little bit more unique. So number 3 is one that I see less of here at Washburn, at least. Number 4 is reflecting on someone that has made you happy or thankful, essentially a gratitude essay. It's in italics because this one is new in the past 2 years, I believe. I think it came out for last year's graduating class. So that one is rare still. I don't see that one very often. Number 5 is similar to the second prompt, in which something happens and a mindset shifts as a result of it. Number 6 is also less common, finding something that is so engaging that it makes you lose all track of time. Why does it captivate you? And then number 7 is that catch-all. You can just write about anything. This one is, I think nationally I read once. This one's very common, but I think in my time at Washburn doing this role, I've had like 2 students that I've worked with select that one. Just, again, it seems kind of scary, right? Like there's a lot of unknown associated with that one. So those are the prompts, and they are available pretty easily. Like I said, you don't have to have the Common App account to see what those are. Some students start with the prompt and write from the prompt. Some students just write and then see which prompt it fits. Because like I said, they're pretty broad, and there is that catch-all with 1 and 7 pretty easily. You don't need to be you don't have to have a direct response to the prompt. So say you're writing in response to number 5, you don't have to use the words accomplishment, event, or realization, or personal growth, or the verb sparked, right? You can just allow your reader to infer that you've made those understandings or have developed some new understanding of who you are. So we're going to shift over to supplemental essays and the actual act of writing. Some students can feel a little overwhelmed with like, how do I even get started? What should I do? So I always recommend that students have 2 Google document files, and they can use their personal Gmail or their school-based Gmail, whatever they're doing, whatever's easiest for them to always be able to access. And they should keep 2 files, one for the personal essay and one for the supplemental essays. If your student is applying somewhere where a lot of supplemental essays are required, it can get a little bit overwhelming to keep track of those. So going through the Common App and pulling those essays out and those essay prompts and their specific word requirements and creating a list of those is very, very important, I think. And then students should be writing in single-space 12-point font, and then instead of so we're not double spacing, and then using line breaks for paragraphs. And the reason why I suggest this is because it allows them to see the entire essay or response on one computer screen. And so they can see what it looks like. So they can compare paragraph length and know, okay, my 2 paragraphs are about the same size. Or, oh wait, this one's super long and that one's super short, and so I need to kind of adjust that. So that's one reason, so you can just kind of keep track of what the essay actually looks like. Unfortunately, I do think aesthetics matter in this case. You know, the admissions counselors are reading thousands of these essays, right? You want it just to be as easily accessible as possible. And then the other thing if you format it like this, as long as you get to the bottom of a Google document page, you're good on your word count of the 650. If you go too far over onto that second page, you've written too much. And so then we don't have to be obsessed with, tools, word count over and over again and know that's where it is. So we can just sort of write like we need to get to the bottom of that first page on the Google document. And then when we do copy and paste it over into the Common Application, all of the formatting that you did might not transfer over. So yeah, like I discovered it with tabs, the 5 spaces, and it was like, why do some of these go over and some of them not? So just if you have everything left justified, single space, 12-point font, and using line breaks for paragraph, it just keeps things super clean and organized. So, supplemental essays are shorter usually. The 650 word, those I've only seen on state schools that ask for a why do you want to go to this school. So Madison has one that's why Madison. I believe both Michigans have that as well. I haven't seen Ohio State. The University of Minnesota does not, but their essays are, why do you want to go to this school? And they give you 650 words to write it. Say it again.
I just said, oh my God.
Yes. Wisconsin gives you 650 words, but then they also say, please keep it to 500. So I don't know why.
I really pity the people who have to read those.
Yeah, it could be. Some of them are very similar. I have read many of them.
Yeah.
I know all about Camp Randall. So those are pretty common, and then some of our smaller liberal arts schools will also they'll like attach their mission to it and say, Lewis and Clark feels this, and talk all about their mission statement and their values, and then they say, why does this attract you? How do you respond to that? And then they give you 250 words to write it. There have been times when students will come running up to me on October 31st and say, can you read my supplemental essays? I haven't started, what should I write about them? Making sure that you know how much you have to write for whatever deadlines you want to keep is very important. So don't forget that the supplemental essays exist. The most important thing with supplemental essays is to be specific and detailed. So if you want to go to Madison and that's you have to write that why Madison's essay, then you should be naming buildings that exist there, classes, the name of internships or programs. I want to take this class with this professor. This is the major I want to be in. This is where I want to be because I want to live in this dormitory. Thinking about both academics and social, not just one or the other kind of thing. Some of the colleges ask you to identify an issue affecting your generation and what you would do to impact it in some way, shape, or form. I've read a lot of essays about climate change and racial inequity and things like that, and those are all very important, and those are things that we should be addressing, but let's narrow it down. So instead of talking about climate change, let's talk about the trash that's in Minnehaha Creek or the garbage swirl in the Pacific. So being as specific as possible in those essays is important. And then when they do allow you room to be creative and have fun, take advantage of it, because some of the more selective schools will ask for you to be fun and creative with things. So you should take those opportunities and embrace them as much as possible. There is a very good guide. This is a link, and let's see if I can make it work. Yeah. It's called the Supplemental Essay Guide. It is a little bit trickier within the Common App to navigate getting to the school-specific supplemental essays. So if you are on the fence on a school and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to apply there or not, I'd like to just look and see what the supplemental essays might be. This guide is linked on my website. It's also in this presentation, which will be up on the counseling website. But they do a pretty good job making sure that these are all accurate. However, I would not say that this is the exhaustive, accurate 100% list. So I would still double check within the Common App, but it is a good place to start. And they tell you even a little bit about how you should approach it. And I think, I haven't seen anything this year that's been wrong, but they're all on there. So, and you just click in, we can look at Brown, be fine. So they they ask you to do 3 essays of 250 words for Brown. That's a lot. And then they give you a little bit of a description of how you should respond to it. So This is a great guide for that. And they also tell you that word length. 250 is a very common requirement for the supplemental essays. I think it's a not fun number to work with because it's either one paragraph that's very, very long and maybe seems oversized if you get right up to 250, or it seems like it's two really short paragraphs. So whenever you have a 250 word supplemental essay, ask yourself, do I want to write two big ideas and separate it into two paragraphs, or do I want to just write one big encompassing response? Which leads us to, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write my essay. And what do I do? So, like with any good writing that we should be doing, we should start with brainstorming. So what story do we want to tell about ourselves? What topic do we want to start with? What are those things that we value? What are our passions? My question this year has been, what are the things that are most important to you? What would you want someone who doesn't know you to know about you? And it doesn't have to be tied to a formal activity or organization. One of the most wonderful essays that I've ever read was about a young woman who she baked cupcakes and brought them to Washburn in the morning, or for lunch, and shared them. And it was just of her own volition. She just did it on her own, picked it up. It was not tied to any sort of organization or anything like that. She didn't want to share necessarily that she was a good baker. She wanted to share that she valued community and the process of figuring things out and sharing joy and spreading that with her friends and the people in the cafeteria. So what are those things that you value and really want to share about yourself? So starting there can be helpful, or starting with, like, I had this really cool thing happen to me, or I had this really difficult thing happen to me, and I need to share that. I need to express that, and then kind of finding out what does that mean about me. So, or what does that show about me? Giving yourself time to draft and have multiple drafts. It is not uncommon for a student to say, I started one, I wrote one, didn't like it, I completely scrapped it, and I started over. And this is the second one. Or even seeing like Common App essay, try 3 on the title when a student comes to work with me. So giving yourself time to not just rewrite, but also like start fresh is important. So if we are looking to hit that November 1 deadline, October 1st is Saturday, so I would say we should probably start thinking about sitting down and working on at least the brainstorming piece. Editing is very important because one of those goals, right, is to show your best work possible. And so having the time to make sure that things make sense, your word choices are as excellent as possible, that the formatting makes sense, and sharing it with another person is key. And I'm specific in saying another person because the more hands that get into the pot, sometimes the harder it can be to know which people to listen to and what to follow. So find that trusted human and have them edit and share it, or work with you on it. It can be someone your age, right? It can be somebody who got into the school. The thing I always like to think about, who's your audience? Yes, it's the admissions counselor. They're probably you in 20 to 30 years because admissions people probably went to the school that you went to. So at a school like Bowdoin that we saw in the supplemental, that's a small liberal arts school in Maine, that group of people who are as attracted to that probably a little bit more similar than all the folks who are attracted to the University of Wisconsin. So maybe a little bit easier to figure out who that audience is on a smaller school.
Amy, this is a reminder that it is now time to transition to...
Oh gosh, I always go over. And then make sure you proofread. That's very important. Read it out loud to yourself or read it from bottom to top. And then, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't finish. We can keep going, or you want to get going? You guys can.
Well,
yeah.
I was going to say, you have another chance the next session and we'll just watch it online.
Oh, yeah. I added some slides. I shouldn't have, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Oh, dear.
Hi.
Here we go. I'll leave tips up so you can take a look at that and take a picture.
Can't believe we're here.
That's an important one.
Closing in on the end of it here.
You going to find some picture? We're good.
Yeah, that's a good one. You want to leave the reader with a positive image?
Do you want to get in there, Miss Bennett?
No, I'm good, Charlie, thank you. I'm feeling a little sleepy today.
Yeah,
Busy week.
same.
I believe it.
Busy Friday too.
I know.
Soul Center. Sounds like well.
Hi.
100%. Thank you, Miss Bennett.
You're welcome, Charlie.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Where's Will? I'm
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
is he of course he is.
Here.
What's that game? Is that 7 or 6?
It's 6:15.
Oh, okay.
What was that? Hello. Hi, Mari. I don't know, is it still recording? I didn't finish last time. Yeah. So I have to record again. Hello, come on in. Five-minute passing time, I think. Welcome. Come on in. Give it another minute or two and then we'll get going. I didn't finish last time, so I think I'll get started. It's really just my intro beginning, and then that's fine. So welcome to the College Essay Writing Workshop. I'm Tara Mennett. I am a teacher here at Washburn. I run the Writing Center. And these first couple of months of school, I spent quite a bit of time working with students one-on-one on college applications, essays. And yeah, that's primarily how I've gathered information about it. Come on in and have an understanding of what works and what doesn't, and how I offer my advice and things like that. So, our plan for today's session is to talk about the Common application, and we primarily focus on the Common App because most students will use the Common App to apply to schools. I'll talk about supplemental essays, and then I'll go over some tips for writing the essay, and then also just some steps and wrap up. And I hope I am able to finish. So I think that there are three main goals in writing the college essay, and two of them will help your student get into college, and the third one will help your student or you become a better human, or have a better understanding of what that means. So one of the goals, of course, is to share their writing ability, right? Like, I am capable of working in this school and doing the academic work that you are asking me to do. So turning in a well-written essay, that's one of the goals, just to show another side of the student's academic ability. Another goal is to show those things that cannot be shown with a quantifiable list, right? So you can't show, you won't talk about your GPA necessarily or your ACT scores. While you may talk about an extracurricular activity in your essay, it's not a list of your extracurricular activities. So it's important to show that other side of the student that can't be shown in all of the lists and the different pages that you just fill in little text boxes. When I work with a student on their essay, I really ask them to think about who they are in this moment, who they be in this moment, as they are about to leave high school and enter into whatever comes next in terms of post-secondary. If they approach it to really in a way that allows them to really reflect on who they are in this moment in time and space and what they value and what they find is important to them, and those pieces of them that are so important that they really just have to figure out what they are and share them with someone else, then these other two goals seem to happen with more relative ease than if they don't do that deeper reflection and really develop that bigger understanding of who they are right now. So that's when I work with a student, I ask them, well, what is the most important thing about you right now that you need to share, you need to let out, and that's where we start often. I use this phrase, it's about who they be. It's not who you are, it's not what you do, it's who you be. What are those core pieces that make up your being that you want to share? Essays really need to be descriptive and specific. This is for both the personal essay and any supplemental essays that students write. But the writing should put the reader in a place where they can see or hear what's going on in the situations that the students are writing about or the images that they are projecting, and feel what's going on too. Like I said, it is not a list. It is a place where a student can expand on some of those accomplishments or some of those activities or clubs. But I would like to know more about why those things are important to a student, why or how those things shaped you, not what those things are. And then the student's voice needs to be consistent and authentic. I'd say that's probably the most apparent thing that bounces out at me is when a student authentically writes what is important and meaningful to them, and when they just dash it off for, oh, I had to write this at the end of junior year for a grade, which I know some people did, not everybody did. But if it is authentically thinking about this is what I want to express right now and who I am and who I be, then that authentic voice shines through. Our students also like to use the thesaurus and various other techniques to smarten up their writing, and that can be very obvious. And then also sometimes they share it with people who are important to them and perhaps give a little bit too heavy-handed in terms of some editing and word changes and sentence structure, and that can also be apparent when suddenly an essay shifts in tone or the sentence sounds like I wrote it as opposed to Mari writing it kind of thing. So that can happen. There are two main types of essays within the college common application. There is the personal essay. If a student is applying to a school that does not use the Common App, they may have a school-specific essay. Those prompts are usually very similar to the Common App prompts and also have similar requirements. I put around 500 words because some of the school-specific essays will have a word count that's 500, but the Common App essay is 250 to 650 words. But if you don't hit that sweet spot of 500 words, I usually look at that with a little bit more of a critical eye. You want to get to that 500 word limit, or number at least, for the personal essay. And then supplemental essays really vary depending on the schools that you are applying to. And it doesn't matter if you're applying to highly selective small liberal arts schools, or if you're applying to Madison, or, well, the U doesn't take it, but the Michigan State does, I believe. Some of the big state schools out west do as well, where they also have supplemental essays, and theirs are actually longer. And those essays can be anywhere from 140 characters to 650 words. If you are planning on applying to more highly selective universities, they will have, most likely they will have more supplemental essays. We were looking at one last session and I pulled up Brown and there were 3, so, and they were all required. So just something to keep in mind when we're starting to think about organization, and we'll touch upon that. With the common application, there are 7 essay prompts. Usually students work from a Google document and then just copy and paste from the Google document into the Common App. And the reason I say that is it is not uncommon for students to be like, how do I even start? Well, we'll start with maybe a Google Doc, and that's a good place. With the Common Application Personal Essay, our only rule is the word count. So the only rule we're given, the only structural thing that we need to follow is that it must be at least 250 words, and that goes, and then the limit is 650. And they just count every space between any block of text. So some students will like turn 7 into the numeral 7, and it's like, nope, that's still a word, so that's not a trick that'll work. We can find places for dashes and hyphens though. And then there are no set number of paragraphs, and there are no specific style guides. We're not using MLA necessarily or any of those other things, but I do recommend that students are really intentional in their formatting decisions, and I'll tell you why when we get to that slide. I think I spent too much time on the prompts last session, which is why I didn't finish. These are the Common App essay prompts. There are 7 of them. They are easily accessible on the internet. You can just Google Common App College Application essay prompts and they will pop up. It's like the second thing. So if you have not started your Common App yet, or as a parent you want to look at that, you don't need the account to get in and see what they are. They're very easily accessible. I do want to highlight number 4 because it is new in the past 2 years. It either came out last year or the year prior. It is about reflecting on something or someone that has made you happy or thankful, and how has this gratitude affected or motivated you. So this is a newer one, and not one that I'm seeing often at Washburn right now. I would say the most common ones that I see are number 5, number 2, and number 1. So 1, 2, and 5 are the most common at Washburn. I don't think we align though with what the national prompts are. Number 7 is a free-for-all, just write what you want and see what happens. Very uncommon. It seems a little scary for folks, I think. And in honesty, I think I've only seen it once or twice, and once was it done super successfully. Most of the things that we write fit pretty easily into one of those other areas. One thing I do want to say about prompts is that you don't need to be super specific in responding to it. So if we're doing number 5, and you're going to write about something that has happened to you and you've grown from it, you don't need to use the word grow. You don't need to use the word accomplishment or event or spark or, oh, I have this new understanding of myself. Those words, those keywords don't need to come back. You can simply infer or allow your reader to infer that those things happened. So there's no like strong thesis statement necessarily that uses those keywords from the prompt, okay? Some tips for staying organized. If you are applying to a school that has supplemental essays, I recommend keeping 2 Google documents. If you just have the personal essay to write, you probably just need 1. 1 for the personal essay and then 1 for supplemental essays. Finding out what supplemental essay prompts you have now and what those word limit requirements are is a good idea. And I'll show you a resource that can allow you to look at those and see what they are without digging super deep into the Common App quite yet. I also recommend that our students write in single space, 12-point font, and that they use line breaks for paragraphs as opposed to tabs. And the reason why is, well, there's a couple. One, when we copy and paste that work over to the Common Application, all of the formatting that we've done gets lost. It just is the text that goes over. So this is the cleanest way for it to happen. It also allows students to see how long their paragraphs are and compare paragraph length between one and the other, right? So you can see that you've started with a paragraph that's a little bit shorter, and then you have a really long one in the as paragraph 2, and then a little short one for 3, and it might just look weird. So you want the essay to be aesthetically pleasing as well. You want to look at the essay and be like, oh, I can see that this is 4 paragraphs of about equal length, and that looks really neat. Or this is 8 paragraphs of about equal length, and that looks really good. Or it's a short, long, 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 short, and that's nice to just see, because these people are reading, the admissions counselors are reading lots of them. So looking clean, looking neat is important. And if you write it like this, with the single space 12-point font, and then using your line breaks for paragraphs, chances are that 650-word essay or that personal essay will pretty much stay on one page. And so then the student can see it on that Chromebook screen, and you can see the whole thing and know what that's going to look like. If you go over onto a second page on the Google document, that's okay. You might be being a little bit close to the 650, but you want it to be about 1 page in length. And that'll get you right there where you want to be in that sweet spot between the two. For the personal essay, yeah, you want to be at like 500 to 650, and that's where you'll be if you are at the 1 page. Supplemental essays range in length and word count, and they also range in what they are asking. Many of them ask you why you want to go to that school. It's very important that if you really want to go to that school, that essay is written in such a way that you could not have written it for another school, right? So if you really want to go to Lewis and Clark, that Lewis and Clark supplemental essay needs to say, and only have been written for Lewis and Clark. They're also the smaller liberal arts schools, and I would say any of the schools that say, why do you want to go here, they write the prompt in such a way that they kind of force you to rewrite the essay over and over again, specific to that school. And that is important because you do want to be specific to that school. So if you want to go to Madison and you're going to write that Why Madison essay, you should be writing about the department that you want to study in, the buildings that you want to walk into, the dormitory that you want to live in, the tradition that you want to be involved in, the street crossing, right? Whatever it might be, you want to write about those academics and cultural, social pieces to the school to show more of your well-roundedness. But again, something that is authentic to you and what you really, really do want to do. Some of the supplemental essays ask students to identify issues that are important to them. Again, being really specific. We're not writing about climate change, we're writing about the garbage swirl in the Pacific instead, right? We're writing about how climate change is affecting Minneapolis and our winters are getting less, or our summers are getting drier and hotter, right? Something like that. And then some schools, and I would say the more highly selective schools, usually offer you an opportunity to be a little creative, maybe have some fun with something. So I've seen one where it's like write 140 character, not word, but character tweet that describes you. Write a list of the skills and attributes and traits that you have. You can do it in bullet list form, right? So you can have some fun with these things as well. If you're given the opportunity to be creative, you should probably go ahead and take that, especially for these highly selective schools. This is this link here, which will be, this presentation will be up on the website, and then also this is linked on my personal website, my writing website. The Supplemental Essay Guide, this website, they gather all of the supplemental essays and then prompts and then also the requirements, and then they just list them all, and you can click into any of the schools and find out what their supplemental essay is. So if you're thinking, oh, maybe I might apply to Barnard, I'm not sure, and I want to see if they have a supplemental essay, this is a good place to start, because the only other way to see them in the Common App is to select that you're going to go to that school and start the application for it. So this is a good resource. And they also give you some explanation on how to respond to it as well. So how should we go about writing any of these essays, the personal essay or the supplemental essay? So we always want to start with just what are these important pieces of ourselves that we want to share, what story, what topic, what place, what human, what do we want to talk about ourselves, what do we want to share, what values do we hold important to ourselves. If I just met you, what is the most important thing I want you to know about me? And that's where you want to start with. Some people start with like the story or the thing or the tangible, I guess. And then some people start with that intangible. I'm a problem solver. I'm creative. I really enjoy community. Some people start with, I love to make cookies. And that's my favorite thing, and I make cookies, and I bring them every month to Washburn, and I share them with my friends. Oh, and you know what happened? We created this really cool community in the cafeteria, and that's what I got out of it. So you can start with either that tangible, the thing I can see, I can hear, I can maybe smell or taste, I can feel, or it starts with that intangible, this is this piece of me that I want to put out there. We're quickly approaching October. I think giving yourself that time for drafting, if you want to hit that November 1 deadline, giving yourself time for rewrites, time to stare at an empty blank page, a time to talk to another adult or person about those brainstorming ideas is very important. So giving yourself time for making the wrong choices is important. It is not uncommon for a student to come work with me and their document title says Common App Essay 3, right? That's the third one they worked on, and that's when they got to me. It has also happened where students have come to me and I'm like, I think maybe we need to do something else here. That is rare, but it does happen as well. After you do your drafting, making sure you're giving yourself time for editing and sharing with another person, at least one other person. And I think that singular is important. There is a lot of information coming at you guys from different people and different folks about this process. I'd hold that essay a little bit tighter and say, Mom, I want you just to read this, or Dad, I just want you to read this, or friend. And look at that with that idea of, well, what am I really trying to say here? Looking at that essay for content, for the word choices, the tone of the essay, and then also the overall format. Well, you know what? Your paragraph 2 is 12 lines, and paragraph 1 and 3 and 4 are all 4 lines. That seems a little bit off. Maybe we need to break that up, okay? And then giving yourself lots of time for proofreading as well, making sure that there are no glaring grammatical or mechanical errors in the draft, okay? Writing is never done, it's also subjective. So you're never going to have a perfect final product, but you will have one that is very good or excellent if you follow and give yourself the time to do all 4 of those steps and go back through them. It's like a cycle, right? And this is advice for all writing, not just the personal essay, but that's that. So these are just, I guess I already talked about this, multiple stages of drafting are definitely not uncommon. Don't be afraid to move on. That multiple perspectives can lead to confusion. Absolutely. I've seen that more than once. Well, somebody told me this and somebody told me that. And so figuring out who your person/people are is key. And then when you are proofing and when you're probably editing as well, reading that essay out loud in this essay, more so than I think our academic essays, that cadence and the rhythm of how it flows and our word choice just becomes so much more apparent when we are reading things out loud. So I know that probably all of your English teachers and maybe a few social studies teachers have told you, hey, you should read your work out loud before you turn it in to me. with this essay, you should absolutely follow that advice. And if you meet with me one-on-one and you come to me with a draft, I read it out loud to you. So that's how that works. So it's really the best way for you to catch any of those mechanical errors as well. With any of our essays, you want to leave your reader with a positive image of who you are, right? So if you are going to write about something that is harder or paints you maybe in a negative light, that's okay if the tone shifts and you end up coming out in the positive. That can be hard for some students because they're afraid to say, like, I am a strong student, or I am a strong something, right? Or I'm confident, or I'm really creative. Those things are sometimes hard for students to acknowledge in themselves, and it is more than okay for you to be bold in that and say, I'm good at this. I get who I am about whatever happened. This crappy thing maybe happened, but I'm better because of it, or whatever ends up happening there. That positive image is super important. A consistent, authentic voice. Authenticity shines through. It's a qualitative, can't put your finger on it, but it's there. When it's there, you know it, and when it's not, you also know it. So that authenticity is so key, and the consistency helps with that authenticity. When we're talking about who's going to help you edit it, who's going to help you look through it, the more people who are looking at it, the harder it is to stay that consistent, right? Because you get voices from all over the place. I've heard TikTok is giving a lot of advice these days on the college essay, so some of it was good though. You do want to provide necessary details, that whatever tangible things you're writing about, whatever tangible topics you have, you want to give those details. I said the words earlier, see, hear, feel, smell, taste. I always think about those 5 senses. I want to be in that space with you. I want to feel it. I want to see it. And if you are writing about something where you can include smell or taste, that's always good, because there's something about memory and connection that works. That's why I always bring up the cupcake one. I also enjoy food, so maybe that's why, I'm not sure. But you want to provide those details. However, you don't want to get bogged down with them. So maybe you have 2 brothers, and if you keep trying to mention both of them, it gets super confusing because you have to name them and talk about why one's wearing a red shirt and one's wearing a blue shirt. It's okay if in this story and in this essay you have one brother and he wears a blue shirt. That's okay. Even though the red-shirted brother was also maybe there. You do want to demonstrate some level of uniqueness and individuality, and so whether that be in the topic and the tangible pieces that you write about, or the intangible, or how you choose to write about it. Students will use metaphors. They'll pick an object that seems unrelated to what they want to share about themselves, and that's how they do it. I worked with a student last year, she time-stamped it. So it was an essay that followed her through 40, 50 minutes of time, and started short and then it got longer as it went on. So the first paragraph said like 2:05, and then the next was 2:08, and then it got to 2:15, and with each subsequent one it got a little bit longer. So that's another way you can be unique. Some students think like, oh, I haven't had this really hard or this really life-changing thing happen to me, so how do I even approach this? I am not unique. But how you choose to express kind of the norm can make you stand out. You do want things to be clear. Can the message that you're trying to send be summed up in 1 to 2 sentences? And then that tone, you don't need to tell that serious, heavy, or sad story. You just need to tell the important one. I often think that the lighter essays are far less common, and so that is a way to be unique, right? Even when students write about their passions, it can also...
This is a reminder that session 2 should be ending now.
All right. So when people write about their passions, they can even write about it in a very heavy and serious way, and approaching it with a more lighter touch can be a way to demonstrate that uniqueness. Are there any questions? I always think about that SNL skit. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh,